Okay, great. Okay, Danielle, should we get started? We're a little bit past 8. I'm sure people can pop on as they need to. We have the session recorded, so that should be great.
Yep.
Thank you, everyone, for joining tonight. If you were at the first session, thank you for coming to the second session. This is all about college athletics, as you probably have seen from our emails and our work with Danielle McNamara over the last year. We've done a tremendous amount of work together, partnering with her at the section level to provide our players with a lot of information tied to college athletics, from anywhere in between, from the how to get started all the way through the recruiting process. So we thank Danielle so much for being part of this and moderating this session. So thank you, Danielle. For those of you who don't know Danielle, she was actually a former New England player, a standout at Michigan, and a college coach. I'm sure you've read her bio in all of our communications. So Danielle, I will let you in a moment just take it away and do a quick introduction of yourself, because you have such an impressive background. I don't want to miss anything. So with all of that being said, just a few housekeeping rules or items. If you wouldn't mind just keeping yourself muted, that would be great, just to alleviate any background noise. If you do have questions, I encourage you to utilize the chat box in the lower right-hand corner of the chat or of the session. That will go to all of us in this conversation. I'd also encourage you to make this as interactive as possible. Okay, the panelists are all well aware of what we're prepared to ask tonight and present on. And so they've been asked as well to really be interactive, chime in on each other's conversation, ask questions to the audience if it applies. So with all of that being said, Danielle, I'll pass it to you.
Yeah, no, thanks so much, Shauna. And thanks to USTA New England for doing this for College Tennis Awareness Month. I think it's amazing you guys are doing this. I mean, the more education we can get out there, the better. And thanks to our coaches and Elle for being on tonight and kind of giving us your time. I know how valuable that is. So I'm excited to get started. Just really fast, I'll give you a quick bio on me, and then we're going to have Anik, Pari, and Elle kind of 2 minutes or so talk about their background with tennis. But like Shauna said, I played New England tennis, went on to play college tennis at Michigan. Played a little bit after college as well, and then knew I always wanted to get into coaching when my playing days were over, because I had such an amazing experience as a college player. So that's exactly what happened. I ended up getting into college coaching as an assistant coach at Yale for a year, and then took over that program as the head coach I was there for a total of 13 years. I was also the head coach at the University of Texas in Austin, and started my own business about a year and a half ago, where now it's DLM coaching, and my whole mission is to help younger players kind of reach their goals, and if they aspire to play college tennis, to help them with that process and get there and find the right fit for them. So I'm excited to be here. Why don't we start with Anik? Anik, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Did that work? Hi,
Yep.
everybody. My name's Anik. Danielle and I have actually overlapped a couple of different times when I was kind of first getting into college coaching. So it's fun to be on a call with her, Pari, and Elle right now. And thanks, Shauna, for bringing us all together. I was a Texas junior kid. So when I went through the recruiting process, it was actually from the Southern section, but I've gotten to know New England really well over the last 8 years since I've been at Williams. I played at William & Mary, which is a public D1 school in Virginia. And then I immediately got into coaching at Williams as an assistant for a year. And then I thought, I've only ever done tennis. Every summer, every, opportunity, I was coaching, trying to make money, all these, different odd jobs through tennis. So I took a break of about 2-3 years where I wasn't coaching. Then I missed it too much. So I got back into it, first at the D1 level, and it wasn't quite a fit. But I still had really strong ties and connections to Williams. I kept in touch with all the teams since I had left. and just got really lucky and landed the job here at Williams back in 2017, and I've been here ever since, and really enjoy what I do. Getting to be an educator through sport is just the absolute best, and I'm hopeful that Pari and I can ease some of your anxieties around the recruiting process, or at least make it less cloudy. I've been a huge proponent of that through my recruiting, and so I hope I can, be helpful in that way tonight. Pari, take it away.
Thanks, Anik. My name's Pari. It's always tough to follow some legends. They're very humble, but Anik coached a national champion a couple of years ago, and Danielle. I mean, there's a long list of things that Danielle has done, and I've been fortunate to be coaching alongside Anik in the D3 world. I've known Danielle for 20 plus years now, dating ourselves a little bit, and same with Shauna. I'm a New England kid. I was born and raised in Hanover, Mass, on South Shore, and played junior tennis in New England. Went to Wesleyan University in Connecticut for my undergrad. Played there. When I finished my undergrad, I was coaching out of a club in Central Mass for a few years, and then got into college coaching 14 years ago. First as the assistant at Brandeis, and then as the head coach at Wheaton College, small D3 school in New England, and then I came back as the head coach at Brandeis 6 years ago. So I'm kind of a New England guy through and through, and a D3 guy. So which is, I think, a huge fit for many of you. And I'm currently the head women's coach at Brandeis University, but for the first 11 years of my career was coaching both women's and men's teams. And so, been working in both the coaching and recruiting space for men's and women's teams. And I'm excited to talk to you all today.
Hi, I'm Elle. So I'm a senior at University of New Hampshire, and I am one of the captains of our club tennis team. We don't have a varsity team here, so it's club, and I get to be one of the captains, and it's really fun. But I started tennis when I was in high school. I played for a high school in Massachusetts, and I ended up really liking tennis, and that was I knew I wanted to do that in college, and I didn't know how I wanted to do it, varsity or at the club level, but I ended up playing both, and now I'm in club at UNH, and it's really, really fun.
Awesome. All right. Well, great. Thanks, guys. We're going to jump right into it. So for those of you that are on this call, just so you know, if you weren't on the call last week, we had our first webinar that I ran with Shauna, and it was more like the college tennis recruiting 101 session. So it was like the 30,000 foot view of the recruiting process, talked a lot about the rules, the important dates, timelines, and we really focused on the early part of the process, just how to get started. We talked about all of the different divisions that are out there and so forth. So we're not going to talk too much about that stuff tonight. If you are interested in learning more about that or didn't attend, I highly recommend getting the recording from Shauna. She will share it, and the slides, and that's a great piece of just information for you all. Tonight, though, since we have coaches and players on the call, I really want to kind of get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, about some of the real nitty-gritty about the recruiting process. So that's kind of the objective tonight. So we're going to go through a series of questions, but as Shauna said, please feel free to type questions in the chat. We're going to save about 10 minutes or so at the end for Q&A. If you have anything there, just type it in and we'll make sure to answer it. So to start off with, I'm going to begin with Anik and Pari. And on the last call, we talked about, from the player's perspective, when it's time to begin the recruiting process, how you might go about making your initial list of schools that you're interested in. Maybe that includes some reaches, some targets, and some safeties. From your perspective as the coach, when you're nearing the start of a recruiting cycle, how do you go about putting together your list of prospective student athletes? What resources do you use? I mean, as much as we don't want to focus on ratings and rankings, at the end of the day, we know level of play matters. So can you talk about that and give some insight on like kind of how you start your process?
I'm happy to get started. Yes, I'm definitely looking at rankings. You know, tennisrecruiting.net is a huge resource, both in terms of just the way it organizes results by class year. That's really useful for us as coaches, and the fact that, you know, for everyone who signed up, it has contact info. So, you know, I think for every school, they sort of have a range that they're looking at. And so, you know, on my end, for example, I'm largely looking at folks within any given class who are kind of, I'll do my initial outreach to folks generally between sort of like 50 and 300 in the country. And so I'm going page by page and getting all their info and then reaching out to all of them. And, you know, at that point, I don't know their academic interests. I don't know what type of student they are. I have no clue what at all they're interested in. All I have is their tennis results, and but that's sort of how I cultivate my initial list. And there might be other folks that I've been in touch with, just sort of in a variety of different ways, whether, you know, through relationship with coaches at clubs or whatnot. But when I'm like putting together that initial list, I'm looking at that and reaching out to folks generally in the summer between their sophomore and junior year, and into the beginning of their junior year. And sort of, you know, after that initial outreach is when I'm going to sort of, you know, based on sort of what the responses look like, that's sort of when I'll like kind of get my first list from there. So like I might reach out to, you know, 250 or 300 prospective students, and, you know, I'm going to get however many responses I get. And that's sort of one of my starting points.
Mm-hmm. Great. Awesome. Anik?
Yeah, I agree with Pari. Ours is pretty similar. I think, you know, so I don't double down on everything that he says. It's a good starting point. Other ways that we sort of fill out the list, and in some ways, some of these, you know, institutions are sort of self-selecting. So the high academic places like a Brandeis, Babson, Williams, Wesleyan, some of the NESCAC schools, you know, the students that are really high academic achievers will already be reaching out through email, and that saves us time and energy of kind of combing through a tennis recruiting list. Because even if we draw 300 names from there, probably 50 to 75 don't have the email, and then we're trying to dig up the email if we've actually seen them play and they look good. And so I think if you do have tennisrecruiting.net, fill out that contact info. That's super helpful for one. And, you know, two, if let's say you're not out, you know, you're outside the top 300 and you're like, well, what do I do? I would say reach out via email and kind of pester us that way. And I deal with a lot of those emails on a daily basis. And sometimes I say, hey, go get some really top-notch results and then circle back with me in 4 months. And while that's tough feedback, I think that it's helpful feedback, right? Instead of trying to string someone along, I'll say, look, these are the results that most of our recruited players are achieving. And then they have a goal and a metric to set out and achieve that goal. Mm-hmm. So yeah, some of it does come from sort of like going to a tournament and seeing someone play that I really enjoy. And then I look them up that way and say, oh, wow, they didn't have their email before. Now I can email them. And so it's a constant combing through. I don't think it's a one and done. For us, it happens, like Pari said, between summer and junior year. It happens again right around this time when fall season is kind of coming to a close at the end of October. It happens again right before spring season, and it happens again after spring season. So there are these major combing through the lists. And all the while, we're receiving emails from new people and filtering through once we have academic info.
Mm-hmm. A couple like really big points there. If you don't have tennisrecruiting.net, get it. Make sure your contact info is in there. That was exactly the same thing I would do when I was coaching. If it's not there, you're sort of left to like DMing someone on Instagram, which is kind of like not great. But I guess it's better than nothing. But like make sure you have your email in there. And then Anik said, you mentioned, so it's a combination of you finding people, but also people reaching out to you maybe even before the summer after sophomore year, just to get on your radar screen. Is that something that you both sort of see a lot of or are seeing more of, people being proactive even before maybe you're really focused on that class? Is that something you recommend?
Yeah, I think anytime we have someone who's being proactive, that sort of tells us a little bit about just sort of one, where they are in their process and just how interested they are. And there's obviously a lot more that follows that, but it just helps us again, like cultivate our initial list, and we can sort of, it allows us to potentially skip a couple of steps of correspondence where if someone's already reaching out, they're providing some academic info, they're providing some, potential video links, they're providing more information to us. That's all stuff that we all eventually need to get from them anyways. So getting that on the front end sort of just allows us to be pretty efficient in our process and kind of just move through the relationship building process a little bit quicker.
Yep. Okay, awesome. That's great. I feel like being proactive on the front end is always great, even if you're not focused on that class. I had situations too where someone would reach out, and if you're going to a tournament that you happen to be focused on an older group, but someone was proactive, you might go watch them even though they're young, which kind of like really speeds it up for them as well. So you get eyes on them early, which is good. All right, so communication begins, whether initiated by you or maybe by the player. Usually, I guess this traditionally begins with email and then kind of goes into phone calls, and you're building a relationship over time, right? You're probably looking for different things from, depending on what holes you're trying to fill with your program. But when you're building those relationships, and you're going to watch people play at tournaments, what are you looking for? Like, what information are you trying to gather to determine whether or not this person, but set aside academics for 1 second, obviously that's like a non-negotiable, but assuming that they check that box, what are the things that you're looking for in recruits?
Yeah, I can start with this one. I think if we set aside some like some of the emotional stuff of like, are they tenacious? Are they tough? Are they battling? Are they competitors? And also, how are they when they, if and when they lose, how do they treat the parents? That's always big too, just to see, okay, what level of maturity are we dealing with at starting point, from a 16, 17-year-old. A big thing just from like, if we're looking at the physical game of tennis, is their movement. So are they athletes? Are they finding a way to get that ball back? Are they hustling on defense and they have the hands to get that one more ball back and play, and they have the speed to do that? I think footwork is something that takes a long time to coach from the tennis side of things, and it takes a lot of repetition, and I'm less concerned with like what exactly the forehand looks like, but can they get to the ball to hit the forehand? And so movement is something that I've found to be incredibly valuable while coaching players. And I've coached 2 stars, 3 stars to play 1 on our team. And the thing they have in common from a tennis standpoint is their movement. They are just phenomenal movers. And so that's one thing. Can they move really well? And do they know how to get the ball in play? Do they know how to get the ball back somehow? You can coach a lot of the other stuff, like they make some bad decisions. Okay, well, that's pretty typical for a 16-year-old. But the movement is really, really tough to coach. So from a physical standpoint, I think that's what I look for, but I'll kick it to Pari for some of the other things too.
Yeah, I mean, I think we're looking at a lot. I'm generally looking for a lot of things. I think most coaches are. And again, and I will also say that going and watching one person one time it's one instance in one day of your career, and so I try to kind of always remind myself of that. I'm not to try to make big generalizations about someone, good or bad, right? Like, could be their best day, could be their worst day of the year, could most likely something in between. But yeah, first I think I'm definitely looking at just sort of how they carry themselves, and how they treat other people. Are they saying nice shot? Are they, you know, are they just being respectful to people around them? Are they treating their parents well, or whoever's traveling with them? Because you know, I think Anik is spot on that, like, we want a mature group, that we're coaching, and like I think we also just don't want to reward bad attitudes. You know, like I think we take a lot of pride in what we're doing up here, and you know, we want people who really deserve that. And I think in terms of their game, I'm curious about sort of what they like to do on court, what they do when their opponent makes them change, like what's their plan B look like in a given matchup. And you know, mechanics aren't everything. You know, no one's game is going to be perfect. I am sort of looking to see if there's something really funky going on. It's sort of going to potentially create a limit, on sort of how much that can be developed, just because, you know, someone's probably having done something for, you know, potentially like a decade. It's like, am I going to be able to like fix that or change that in 4 years? Like, is it going to be worth trying to fix that? And so I'm aware. I try to be aware of that. And yeah, just I think those, you know, their attitude, their tenaciousness, that stuff is super important. And so it's a lot of little things, and it's just adding more information to sort of like, just trying to like put a face with an email and just sort of see how they're handling their business.
Pari, you know what? The men's coach here, Dan Greenberg. So I coach the women. If that wasn't clear, I missed that in my intro. But Dan Greenberg is the men's coach here. He's also a friend of Pari's, and he told me a few years ago when I asked him some of these same questions, because we talk all the time, and he said, you know, Anik, I honestly am just looking for someone that I can get along with, that I want in the passenger seat of the van. And for 4 years, that in 4 years, I'm just going to enjoy having them in the passenger seat of the van. And I think that is a really great way of talking about a lot of things that Pari just mentioned, right? Like, we want someone who's respectful, who's kind, who has a sense of humor, who can, you know, who's just a good kid. And obviously the tennis needs to be there to a certain point, but the more that parents can instill that and that above anything else, like, this is really the most important thing. It is true. I pick players all the time over other ones that have higher ratings, have higher rankings, because we just have such a good connection in the recruiting process, and they come so highly recommended by their coaches, where they're like, you're literally getting my favorite kid. And that has made a huge difference, and has been actually a shift. I wasn't always that way. I probably made a shift like 2 or 3 years ago, and we'll see if it works. But I'm definitely enjoying myself a lot more now.
A couple like key points I feel like you guys made. I'm trying to log it all in my brain, but Pari, your point to, you don't make decisions on one match, right? Like, I feel like I talk to a lot of players that are so concerned about like, oh my God, but I lost that match and Pari was watching. It's like, you're not making decisions on that, right? It's a long process. I feel like that's one key takeaway. And Anik, I love that point about the van test. And I feel like the longer you coach, the more you start to gravitate towards like the people versus almost the tennis. Because you know, one kind of bad apple can destroy team culture and all of that. So it's huge. Okay, so I also want to talk about, so we moved through this process. Ultimately, you know, we talked briefly in the last call about different types of campus visits, unofficial, official. Someone comes to campus that's a bit later in the process, but I wonder how much you guys like rely on your current team for those visits and for their input in the process? And sort of like, could you explain maybe what the purpose of that visit is from your perspective, like what you're trying to get out of it, and what a recruit might expect if they're, because we do have some juniors and seniors on the call that might be making visits now, and it could be really helpful for them to hear about this from you guys.
Go for it, Pari.
Yeah, I definitely do. Whether it's an unofficial or an official visit, like they're going to spend a bunch of time with my players, and I want that to be the case. I have a lot of trust in my team. You know, I think the longer, I think this is something that Anik was just talking about. The longer I've been in college coaching, the more in the recruiting process I'm looking for value alignment, and with recruits and, you know, people that are going to join my team. And I feel like I have that with my current group of players, and it's been the case for a number of years. And so they know me really well, and they know the type of people that are gonna, you know, the type of people that would be good teammates on their team. And I think they care a lot about it. They care a lot about only bringing in people that would be good fits. So like when a prospective student when a recruit's visiting on campus, you know, my players aren't grilling them. They're just being their normal selves around them, but they are kind of taking stock of like, oh, would this person fit in well with the group? And not are they the same as everyone else, but do they share similar values? Are they fun to be around? Are they gonna, you know, fit in within our vibe? And so, you know, and I think that piece of it has become a little bit easier over time, as just like the level of value alignment, I think, across and on our team, which I think this is probably a natural thing for coaches as you're kind of in it for more and more years. So I trust my players, and I think they trust me to not bring someone on campus that's not going to be a great fit. And with the earlier in the process with unofficial visits, or like, you know, there's been instances where we've been traveling somewhere and we're playing a match, and like a prospective recruit like comes to watch the match and they chat with one of my players. And I've certainly had instances where they're like, please do not continue the process with this person. This person would not be a good fit. And I generally listen to them about that. I'm either like, let me do a little bit more homework up here, or I'm like, okay, you just spent a bunch of time with them. So it's not the end all be all, but I do put a lot of weight in what my players say. And you know, it's an important part of this process.
Yeah, it's pretty similar for us as it is for Pari. It's super important. It's the only time I tell recruits to really listen to their gut. You know, obviously, like on the court, I'm not going to say feed into your emotions and all your feelings. Like, you're going to have to like feel your things and put it at the back of the bus and keep driving the match. But after a campus visit, if you're feeling a certain way, that's a really important thing to pay attention to, because otherwise a lot of these schools are pretty similar. You know, we're top academic institutions, or maybe they're all gorgeous. UNH is a gorgeous campus. And so you're like, wow, there's like 15 gorgeous campuses I just visited. So it's really like, how does the place make you feel? Can you see yourself walking around the library? Can you see yourself eating at the dining hall, walking down to the tennis courts, you know, captaining the team like Elle up there? So I think that's a really important piece too, is kind of to take notes after your visit. How was I feeling on this campus? Did I enjoy it? It's just as much a part of the process as our kind of players interacting, and whether they enjoy it or not is did you enjoy it? Or is it, you know, did you visit initially because of a ranking or what have you, and then you left feeling like, ugh, didn't really like that place, but I love the color purple. You know, it's like, you've got to suss through what's actually really important to you and how you feel when you're in that space. And so I tell them to listen to their feelings, listen to their gut, and they might be surprised.
Yep. Shauna, is your hand up?
It is. I just had a quick question chiming off of, if you don't mind.
Of course.
Off of everything that Pari and Anik just said. Elle, this question is for you. Do you find, and it might be completely different for tennis on campus, and I think it would be great for the audience to hear from your perspective, do you find yourself spending time with players who are coming to UNH who might not know a lot about club tennis but want to learn more as they're starting to make their decisions on where they're looking and where they want to apply for the following year?
So because it's like club tennis, we don't really have we don't talk to a lot of people, like tennis players trying to decide.
Okay.
But before the season, we do have we have a thing called Find Your Fit and U Day, and that's where we give a lot of our information. But those are for people who are already at UNH and they want to play tennis. But yeah, club tennis is a little different.
Mm-hmm.
But for that, we do have a lot of players that are really, really good. And I know a lot of the teams we play, the players are really good. And some of them could definitely be playing at division level. So it's very, in that sense, it's similar to division in that way. But we're not walking around with people who are deciding at UNH most of the time, unless they reached out to us, then we obviously would.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Awesome. Okay, we're going to learn more. I want to dig into tennis on campus in 1 minute. I just want to ask Anik and Pari a few more questions because I know these are some that I hear a lot. Question on, you get to the point where you're making some offers, right, to recruits, and you guys both coach Division III programs, and so you can't offer athletic scholarships. But is there any kind of assistance that you can provide, or do you have a certain spots or thing? How does it work from a, is there anything you can offer someone when you decide I want you on my team, I've recruited you and I want you to have a spot on my team? How does that work for you guys?
Go for it, Anik.
Okay. So yes, we can help. Not we have not with athletic scholarships in Division I. But let's say we get to the end of the process and this person is Williams is my number one and we're over the moon with this person. They've visited, we've seen them play a few times. They keep progressing, their game keeps getting better. All their coaches, guidance counselor, they check all the boxes. The team really enjoyed them. Then yeah, we get to July and we'll say, hey, we'll call her Ellie. Ellie, we really like you. We really want you to come to Williams. And Ellie's like, oh my gosh, yes, Williams is my number one. So what we'd say is, okay, look, we can support you through the application process. And so what that entails is that we usually ask that the student athlete apply early decision. And so we support their application. So we kind of buoy the application. They still have to get ridiculously good grades. They can't fall off the bandwagon in any way, shape, or form academically. Can't get in trouble with the law. I always tease them. But then what happens in December is we've buoyed their application. I just go into a database and I check a box next to their name. And what happens is admissions will read their application and make sure that they are to the standard academically. So there is a chance that admissions will say, after doing a pre-read, which happens in June, they could say, hey, we've got some red flags. It has never happened to me, but I want to be careful here because I don't hold all the power. I just hold a lot of what I think is feels like a lot of power because I've been very successful in it. But kind of to Pari's point earlier, we do a lot of work ahead of time so that we never get to that point in the process where admissions, who holds all the power, would say, hey, no, and pull the rug out from under us. At least that's how it works at Williams. They still hold the final word. So there's always a chance. But I've been successful. I have a 100% success rate when I say, hey, I will support you through this process. Admissions has my back in that, and the student does get accepted.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's similar here. And I think basically at at the end of your junior year, you can do, and maybe you guys talked about this in the last webinar, but you can pretty much every school is going to offer some version of an early read or a pre-read where you're going to get some early feedback on your chances of admission. And I think most coaches are pretty transparent about what that means. And so, similar to Anik, my admissions team would rip my head off if I ever guaranteed anything, but I've never had someone who got a positive early read and then didn't get admitted to the school that I supported. And so, but every school is going to be a little bit different. I know that, some of the most selective schools, they're like, well, we're going to increase your chance by some percentage, but it's still not a guarantee. And so you just want to have those conversations with each coach to kind of get a sense of like what that's going to look like on their campus. And, I think we want to, in service of, being honest and building relationships, we're going to try to be transparent with you all about what exactly that's going to look like. It doesn't look good for us if, we support someone and then it doesn't work out, like that's a problem. And so, yeah, we want to be clear with you. And I think that the process has been trending earlier with a little bit with each year where more and more folks are not just building through early decision round 1 in November, but like making those decisions even earlier, potentially just doing unofficial visits and not an official visit. What that looks like for each coach is going to probably depend on that coach and their school and what their needs are in that year. So just, you want to ask those questions, and, different coaches are going to handle it a little bit differently, but they're hopefully going to be pretty clear with you about what that looks like as you communicate with them sort of in the spring of your junior year leading into that summer.
Yeah. And just for the record, the process is extremely similar in all of the Ivies as Anik and Pari just described, even though they're Division I. A lot of people ask me about the Ivies. And we talked in the last webinar about the importance of academics and how it really matters. So like, even if you're a superstar tennis player and you want to go to Williams, if you don't meet the grade, like it doesn't matter. Like Anik can't will something into being. If you're a C student and you want to go to Williams, like you could be number 1 in the country. And I bet Anik, that's not happening. Like admissions is going to be like, sorry, I know this is a game changer, program changer kid, but like, they're not going to hang academically. So that's probably not going to work. And same thing, even with the bigger power 4, power 5, power 4, I guess now Division I schools. I mean, it really matters. And it also matters from a financial standpoint. It could, your grades could get you money at a school that is otherwise not affordable and now all of a sudden is. So there's just so many reasons why grades matter. And any offer given to you verbally by a coach before a pre-read is 100% on their confidence level of that read being positive, because no one in admissions has seen it yet. So just know that. All right, I'm gonna, Elle, I wanna talk to you about tennis on campus because it's a fantastic option. I find a lot of players that I talk to are in this dilemma of, I really want to go to a good school, but maybe my tennis doesn't quite my tennis isn't quite at the level that I can play at that school on the varsity team. And so like, what do I do? And so tennis on campus is an amazing option, and it's offered now more and more on campuses across the country. It's sponsored by the USTA. I don't know, Shauna, maybe you know the number of colleges and universities now that have tennis on campus teams, but Elle, could you give us kind of like an overview of, what tennis on campus is? I know it's co-ed, but like, what's the season look like? Are there tryouts? If I'm a student, I go to UNH and I want to be on tennis on campus, what do I do? How does that work?
Yeah, so basically, well, when I was in high school, that was also like my biggest thing was I wanted to play tennis, and I heard about club tennis. I never really knew about it, but I wanted it to be competitive. So I was like, okay, I'm going to go play varsity tennis. And I did that, and it didn't end up working out for me, like not just tennis, like the school, but I transferred to UNH, not even for tennis. And I found that they had, I knew they had a club tennis team, but I never really like researched it. So the next year I ended up trying out, and it's very competitive, like not like our school's competitive for tryouts, but I was really surprised by all the teams we played and how competitive it is. We play so many different teams in New England. We play Ivy Leagues, and some of the kids on the Ivy League club tennis teams could be playing D1. Like they don't want to commit, so they're playing club, but they are really good competition. WPI, Tufts, all the like NESCAC schools, very good competition as well. It differs by school. Some it's not as much competition, so it is very like dependent on the school. But for me, like it was such a great decision, and it ended up working out great, and I don't like regret it at all. But so yeah, tryouts. Our school. We have 3 days. It's at like the beginning of September. And we have like around 36 kids on the team, and it's like half and half girls and guys. And for me, I love co-ed. It's a great way to meet so many people, and I also feel like it makes like there's not as much drama because there are guys and girls, and that's what I really like about it.
Yeah. That's great. And I know when you and I spoke, you were explaining to me, and I'd like you to share with the group, how this is really a student-led organization, and also talk about like the travel that you actually do. I mean, the schedule is impressive that you guys play there.
Yeah. So it is student-led. We have a coach, but it's up to us like what we want to do, and we manage everything. So there's 6 captains. Me and one of the other captains do social media. We do like the Instagram for our team. And then there's 2 that do financial. Financial is a big job because we have to manage everything. We manage like our trips, and like we have to buy equipment like the tennis balls. And then we also do indoor facilities during the winter. And we also have to apply for grants, and that's how we get money as well as fundraisers. And then we have 2 captains that manage like the website and buy our uniforms. And yeah, so it's a big, like we all kind of like work together to make it happen. Yeah, and the travel. So we travel around New England, but then we do at least 1 flying trip a year. So last year we went to Colorado, and we played in a big tournament out there, which was really cool because we got to play like Midwestern teams like Minnesota, like Purdue, Wyoming. That was really, really cool because we wouldn't normally play those teams, and they're really good out there. And then the year before, we went to Tampa and Orlando. And out of Orlando, we played nationals. That was like our nationals trip, and that was a big tournament. But the teams out there that were playing at nationals were very good as well. So it was kind of just like for fun for us. But we do a lot of traveling, and it also depends on teams. But the teams in New England, I feel like, are very committed to club tennis, and they love to travel like around and play us. Or we were just recently at Brandeis. Brandeis had a big tournament there, and we got to play Brandeis, like their club tennis team. So yeah, we do a lot of traveling, and on the weekends we're basically always playing until like November is our last match for the fall.
Okay. And then is there a spring season as well?
Yes. So the fall is a bigger time for us, and then spring we have like a few matches kind of like end in March and then April. And then winter we don't have as much because we don't have indoor courts unless we get invited somewhere. So last winter we got invited to a Dartmouth tournament, and we played at Dartmouth for 2 days. Yeah.
That's great. I mean, my gosh. I mean, you have a schedule like some college teams do. And the fact that you guys are doing this by yourselves, I mean, you can think of my 18-year-old self organizing this stuff. It's incredible, like the skills you guys are getting. So, yeah, I mean, so just any advice that you have for someone like, deciding between, do I play varsity? Because that's a huge commitment at any division. It is. I mean, you're a very close second as an athlete to being a student, and you've experienced both. You played Division II, and then you're now at UNH playing tennis on campus. Can you just give any advice to someone that might be deciding kind of which path is best for them?
Yeah. I think that, like, I feel like deep down, how much you want to commit to a sport. And I love tennis and I love playing it, but I also know that I like having a little bit more time for myself. D2 was a very big commitment, and D3, any division, it's basically the same commitment because you have like it's full commitment. You can't really like miss a practice if you have like a lot of work. Like you might be able to miss like one, but and then you have like team lifts. And for me, I did like some aspects of that, but you really do need to be like best friends with everyone on your team because you're spending like 24/7 with them. And that's another thing I would look for when you like go to school is just making sure you like kind of like vibe with the girls or the guys on the team because that's a really big factor. And then I'm getting sidetracked, but club. Oh, for me, club is the perfect mix. And I like how big the team is for us. It's like a perfect size because I get to meet so many people. And we have 4 practices a week. That depends on every school, but you have to go to at least 2. I usually go to 3 because I have a class on Mondays, and then we usually have matches Saturday, Sunday. So it is similar on some levels, but we don't have you don't have to be forced to go to every practice, and you also don't have to go to every match.
Okay. That's great. And the matches, just real fast, because this was interesting. I didn't know this. Your match format is very different from sort of the varsity format of ITA. Can you explain just quickly kind of what the format is for you? Because it's co-ed in the matches too, right?
Yeah. So we usually play more than one team because it's very quick. We play more than one team a day, but we don't have a lineup either. We kind of like have everyone play, not a day, but we like mix it up. So basically we have 1 women's singles, 1 men's singles, 1 women's doubles, 1 men's doubles, and then 1 mixed. And that's like the USTA format. And it's just 1 match to 6, so it goes quickly. But we usually play more than one team because of how quick it goes. And it's a weird setup at first, but you get used to it.
And every game counts.
Yeah, every game counts. So it's not like in high school it was like 5-0 or 5 or like 3-2.
Right.
But it's to 30. So it's like if you're losing 4-1, like if you can come back even to like 6-3, your 3 games count to the final score.
Yeah. That's awesome. Tennis on campus is such a great option for people to be aware of. I don't know that it gets enough light. And Shauna, I'm sure you'll provide some resources this month to people if you want to learn more about it, find out which schools have a team, and kind of check it out more. But definitely just keep that on the radar screen. So I think I have some more questions, but I'm going to stop and pause and see if anyone in the audience has some questions. If not, I can just kind of move forward with my final few. But are there any questions from the audience for anyone on our panel right now?
There's one question in the chat, Danielle, about
sorry.
That's okay. Do D1 schools play year round, D3, D2, etc.?
Okay.
Yeah, I think our athletes do. There's going to be heavier periods and slower periods, and sort of across different divisions, there's sort of a certain, this is the boring policy answer here. There's certain permitted dates that you're allowed to be on with your team. So for Division 3, we are going to be on with you 114 days during the academic year, and then the NCAA tournament happens sort of after that. And I don't actually know the data for the other divisions, but that's how it works for D3. And then sort of, when my players are home on their own, winter breaks, summer breaks, they're continuing to train, they're continuing to stay on their strength and conditioning schedule. I think there's going to be stretches where they're probably playing more, and some stretches where they're playing less. But I think similar to junior tennis, they're not just like seasonal athletes, right? They're training year round with certain parts of the year where they're going to be playing a little bit more than others.
I think maybe just to shed a little light on the Division I life of a student athlete, Anik, maybe either from your William and Mary days, or, you know, I can piggyback on that too, but I feel like that can be a very demanding, like extremely demanding lifestyle. And for some people that's great. I feel like if that's what you want, but just and again, even at Division I want to be very clear that there are hundreds of Division I schools. And so your experience as some people get so caught up in it, I've got to go Division I. And it's like, well, you could go to Stanford and be D1, or you could go to a school you've never heard of and be D1. And I guess you've, checked the box, you're D1, but like, try not to focus so much on the division and think more about the experience in the school, because I think it can't, even under the Division I umbrella, I think you can be, at the highest level, like, it's extremely demanding. You're traveling a ton. You're traveling nationally, kind of year round versus regionally and stuff like that. Or it could be not quite that. So I think, anyways, Anik, I don't know if there's anything you want to add to the Division I kind of perspective for anyone that's thinking that route.
Yeah, I think there's just so many schools out there. There's so many schools in D3. There's so many schools in D2, NAIA. It makes it really tough. I see questions like what have been popping up in the chat, and to Pari's point, like it really is dependent on the school. So the more that you can pull lists from online, okay, here are the top 50 Division III schools that, start to look at the players on those teams. What kind of results have they had? And I think, okay, maybe I'm a fit here. Reach out to the coach and ask. I think it's always nice when recruits do their homework first and ask that kind of thing. But it really depends on the school. Like, we missed a lot of class at William & Mary, which was incredibly stressful for me. And, I didn't know D3 existed. I'll be perfectly honest. I think it was in a different place when I was in college, and it has just boomed. And the level is outstanding. And so, yeah, I think you got to like dig into it. Some D3 schools play way more matches in the fall. And, Williams and Brandeis are more on the same page. We operate more like a Division I school in a lot of ways. We're playing 16 to 20 hours a week, devoting that much time to our sport. And that's more in line with what I was doing at William & Mary. So I think you kind of have to ask instead of just assuming or assigning a label.
Yeah. Well said. We have a question about, someone says, I thought it was a spring sport, but seems like there are fall matches too.
Split season, fall and spring, for most of the divisions out there that I'm aware of. Pretty sure NAIA, junior colleges. Yeah. That's another one. There's junior colleges out there that are really nasty. They're really good. They're amazing, amazing competition. Great, fantastic coaches. So.
Yep. The fall season is more of an individual season for a lot of the divisions, not all. And it typically goes at least until Thanksgiving, and then you can kind of continue training even into December for some schools up until your exam time. And then for Division I, when you get back in January to start classes, you're pretty much starting practice again. And that runs all the way through May, with most weekends filled with competition. Not all, but I would say most, either home or away. And the D3 season, you guys, starts a little bit later, I think, right? Like February, is that your rule?
Depends. I think, mid January for some programs at some conferences. NESCAC is always trying to be peculiar. So.
All right, Shauna.
Quick question for everyone in relation back to recruiting and that piece. Can you talk a little bit about when you're looking at players, if you look at their track record and you see a lot of withdrawals and things of that nature on their record, can you talk a little bit about how that may impact your decision in terms of continuing to recruit that player and what that tells you about players?
Yeah, I mean, I'll certainly ask questions about it and try to get a little bit more information. And it's just, there's like a wide range of things it could be, where it's like if it's clustered in one part of the year and they're like, yeah, I'm working through this specific injury, that's like a different thing than, if they're withdrawing every other tournament for a year evenly across a year. So I'm like looking at it, but I try not to make assumptions just looking at the data. I want to have a conversation, and I think that we've had enough of these conversations that we can tell when someone's kind of being straight up and honest with us, and when they're not. And so, but yeah, I mean, we want people who want to be out on court and are going to persevere, and aren't looking for an easy out when they don't have to. So yeah, just gonna ask questions and try to get more info about it.
That's helpful. And I think it goes back to a conversation that Danielle, I think you mentioned this in the last webinar, really, one of your favorite parts of going to the big tournaments is going to the back courts where the consolation is playing and learning from those players. And it does shows you their character and their grit, and they want to be out there. And that really shows you, in the depths of a tournament or a depths of a match, a big match, and it comes down to them. That's really going to show you, who they are and how they're going to fight for your team. So I think that's all really important. Thank you for sharing.
I have one. Oh, yeah. We have a question.
Yeah, just typically each year, like, how many, if any, people do you accept as walk-ons? So like people you don't recruit onto your teams.
That's a great question. What's your name?
It's Ananya. Sorry, this is my dad's name.
All good. Hi, Ananya. That's a really good question. I actually get that question fairly often. And again, it sort of depends on the year. So this year we're a little bit small. We have 9 people. So if someone were to walk up to me and say, "Hey, I'd love to, try out," and I might say, "Hey, we have room in the van. Like, let's see what you're made of. Let's see what you got." And we'd facilitate a tryout. Like next year, probably not, because we're gonna grow and we're gonna be 11, and it's already gonna be complicated with budgets and rooms and things like that. But I've taken walk-ons. I've taken 2 walk-ons since I started here. Both had a lot of tennis playing experience, both added to the program in different ways. One a little bit more as a player, scoring points for the team, and another one as just like the stable center of our universe that we needed. We needed some sanity that year and maturity, and she brought that. So I think it really depends on the year. Would I encourage someone whose heart is set on Williams, who says, like, I gotta play tennis and I can't guarantee a tryout, but there's a 5% chance? I'd say keep looking, because if you really, really want to play college tennis, find a program, find a coach that can say 100%, like, you can walk on, you can try out, so that you're not disappointed in that regard. But it really depends. I'm not sure, Pari, how you treat the tryout.
Yeah, it's very similar. It's very dependent. It's year to year. It's around roster numbers and sort of what the level of the person is. And when I first took over as a head coach at Brandeis, I inherited a very small roster, and so I did take some walk-ons, and then we got a little bit bigger than I liked. And so now I'm like, all right, unless somebody, we'll kick the tires on anyone. Like, we don't ever want someone to fall through the cracks that we think can like be a great teammate and help. But the chances are probably pretty low. And I think, one of the broader things to sort of, I think, extrapolate a little bit from what Anik just said is that I'd encourage you to just try not to fixate too much on one school. There isn't just one school that's right for you. There is a ton of schools that are right for you that would be a great fit for you. And so, try to think about the core characteristics that you're looking for and like cultivate a list using that information, and then try to find a coach who is really invested in you and is going to guarantee that roster spot. And because like it's really amazing to be on a team, and you want to have a little bit more certainty than like risking a walk on and like a walk on opportunity, which like may or may not be there. So, just try not to fixate on. You're going to get a great education at like most schools you go to, and so just trust your ability to adapt to slightly different spaces, and just keep your options a little bit wider.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Shauna, do we have time, or I don't know how we're doing here?
We are at 9, but I think for 1 or 2 more questions.
Okay. Do we have any final questions for our panelists?
Yes, I will definitely give everyone access to the first session as well. And we'll also follow up this week and then in the junior newsletter as well. So you'll have access to all of the upcoming webinars recorded also.
And for any players on the call that are in the New England section, I mean, we're so fortunate to have so many great college programs that are like clustered in a very small area. Like, go out and watch these teams, watch Williams, watch Brandeis, like see for yourself the level and walk around campus and explore, do a campus tour. Like, I feel like some of these things are right at our fingertips here in this section, which aren't really the case in some others. That are just so valuable to help you like figure out what you like, what you don't like. And, use tournaments is a great reason to do that as well. If you're traveling and you have a free couple of hours and there's a school nearby, like it's a great way to begin to explore options.
Dana, you do have one other question that came in. Can you suggest resources to research besides tennis recruiting?
Yeah, I think actually one place to start that I send recruits a lot is just the ITA tennis rankings list and look at D1, D2, D3, NAIA, just to get an idea of like what schools are out there. And those are a bit limiting because in some cases, Pari, I'm not sure how far down the ITA goes for D3. It might be 75 or something like that. So it is limiting, right? There's like 300 D3 programs out there. But by clicking a couple of those, you're going to see who they compete against, right? If you click number 60, you're going to see names that aren't on that list. And so you'll get to add even more to it. But I would look at the rankings list just to start, and you'll get a sense of what schools are ranked where in each division. And you can, like Pari suggested earlier, look at the roster. You can look at WTN and UTR if you want, or tennis recruiting, any of those resources to get a sense of, okay, where are my current ratings? How do I stack up? Everybody always thinks, they're 2 points higher than they really are. And myself included, I feel like right now I'm a 4, I'm probably playing like a 2. So, but anyways, I would start with that ranking list because you're gonna learn names you never knew existed.
Yeah, if you go on the UTR website, and I'll probably reference UTR a little bit more than WTN just because I'm not as familiar with it yet. But you can do like a search and filter by UTR and sort of match it up with colleges, and you can like select like this UTR within the top 4 of a roster, or top 6 or top 2, and so it'll give you the whole list of any school that's in their system. And so just like another starting point. And to what Danielle was saying, like, go visit campuses. That's the big thing. Every college hires a great marketing team. Everyone's website is great. Every school's Instagram account is fantastic. Go trust your own eyeballs, and for those of you in New England, even if you're not like, oh, this is really a school that's high on my list, like the more you go and see these schools in person, the more you're going to actually get a better feel for things that are important to you, and what kind of feels right to you. And like it can be a little bit of a slog to go on a million college like tours and info sessions, but it's a lot of fun to go watch a college tennis match and to go watch a practice. So go do that.
It's easier, Pari, here in New England than it was in Texas to go see so many colleges. Texas is a bit more spread out. So I think the juniors here have it a little bit easier, and you can hit, Wellesley, you can hit Smith, you can hit Amherst, you can hit UMass all in a day. That would not really happen in Texas. You'd be like, all right, well, pack it up. We're going to go 4 hours west. And so that's kind of nice that you can do that.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Danielle, do you have any last minute items?
No, I just want to really thank everyone for being here. I'm going to just type my email in this chat. If anyone has any follow-up questions, just feel free to shoot me an email and we can talk. I'm happy to help with any personal questions maybe you don't really feel comfortable asking in this format, which I totally get. So feel free to reach out. But just want to thank Elle, Pari, Anik, Shauna, and all of you. This was awesome. So yeah, turn it over to you, Shauna.
No, thank you all so much for being here. The panelists, thank you so much. We really appreciate your time. I know you're all very busy, and so we really appreciate you taking some time to talk to our New England players and help educate them on their next steps as they start to look at the process. So other than that, have a great night. We've recorded the session. We'll send it out to everyone, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone.